All right. Give it a sec for some people to join. All right. Welcome, everybody. I see some people starting to come in. Welcome to today's Lunch and Learn. Today, I will be your host, Jeremy, and I will be doing my best to answer any questions, providing any information, whatever it is that we've got for the day. So please feel free to answer or ask any questions in the chat, in the Q&A, and I'd be happy to go over any questions or any things that we may be wanting to look at. So please feel free to ask any questions, and I'll give it a minute to see if anyone has anything. Then we can get started. All right. I am not seeing any questions pop up at the moment, so we can just go ahead and kind of talk about our usual stuff, and then I can just start taking a look at some things. Oh, as soon as I said that, we get a question, so we can talk about that question. All right. So first of all, just quickly, we'll go over the typical. Don't forget to check out our main two things. Check out the decision support channel, our YouTube channel where we post all of our lunch and learns, but also additional content, and other nice things. So there's a lot of different things that you can utilize and show there. So make sure you check out that. Check out some of the content that we'll be posting up there weekly with videos on different steps and things to do, as well as other content and different things that can be done in decisions. Also, please check out our solutions marketplace. We've got a lot of cool applications and things that you can try out there, download some projects and play with them in decisions. So you have a lot of really great things to learn or get some creative juices flowing, anything like that. If you got something that might be similar to what you're working on, or may give you some good ideas for any builds and things that you need to do, or things that you want to learn about in decisions. So definitely check those things out. Also, we've got our submersive events coming up. So I know it might be a little late for any last minute if anyone wants to join things, but if for those of you that are coming out, we're definitely excited to see you come out for the support, and check out Submerse and everything. So, with that, we will take a look at some of our questions here. So Alexander is asking a couple questions in the Q&A, so we will go to these. We got, hello, I have a form where users can select items. I need the user to not be able to select obsolete items, which is a field in the data structure. So I will give you a chance to talk, and you can kind of expand a little bit on what you mean.
Hello. Yeah, so it's a form in our quotes form, and essentially they look up items that they're quoting, inside of our business. And say item 1, 2, 3, 4, they can type in and it pops up and they can click it to populate the form. But sometimes the items are actually obsolete. And we have that information here now. And so I want to move the option for them to select it, but I still need them to see it. That way they don't like come back to me and tell me that, hey, this item isn't showing up. So I need them to be able to see it, but I just need them not to be able to select it if possible. And because when I was talking to my other team member, I believe they said that we couldn't make the checkbox go away based on the field data. So I recommended maybe we could do like a pop-up or something or some kind of functionality within the form. Preferably we want to do this within the form that way. We don't really make any changes to our flow if possible. Do you have any questions?
At the moment, let's go ahead. Let me just create this and then we can see if I have the correct understanding. Make sure I have the right understanding of what you're looking for, and then okay. So you're saying we got a drop down, right? User selects the drop down. It shows everything that you want, and you want them to show everything, like everything displaying here, but they're not able to select everything.
Correct. So there's like a checkbox and you can, after you put in, basically essentially after putting in the SKU for the item, it'll populate and you can just select what items you want to select from. And after that, you just kind of add it to the main form essentially. But once again, I want to make sure if it's obsolete that we no longer add that, which is a field that we added to the data structure, so it exists. So we can work off of it.
Hmm. Okay, wait. Let me one more thing I didn't quite get. So you have this selector, right? The drop down, they pick it, and
Hmm.
it's populating another box with something.
So you start off by selecting the item SKU,
Uh-huh.
and then it populates a box after you type in like one of the SKUs. Like usually you type in part of it, and then
Hmm.
you select that item, and then you type in another one, select that item, and then once you're done selecting your items, you just press add, and it adds it to the main form because this is a pop-up as well.
Got it.
And then once you've selected your items, it goes and retrieves the extra data and information about it, and then adds it to the main form.
Okay, so it's more like a multi-select then, because I can
Yeah,
select multiple things. Got it.
you can select multiple things. Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. So we got a multi-select drop down.
Mm.
User selects items from it, whatever. Select one, and then it populates another box on the side with the data for it.
Yes, and then that second box, that's where they actually can do the selecting. I mean that part isn't, I mean, as important, I guess. Technically,
Hmm.
if you just could, you know, that part isn't as important, but yeah, I guess there's the search bar, the search, and then once you do your search, it pulls up all the options, and then you can select from the options.
Hmm. Okay, and then after all that, whatever, they have got these options that they can select. You want it
Hmm.
to say, like, if they try to select something that doesn't work, is it like you don't want them to select it at all? Do you want it? Are you looking for, I guess, like the obvious the obvious easy choice is just like you can create an active form flow that would say if the thing that they selected on this drop down equals, something that already exists or something that's in the list of, your data structure or whatever, you can just add validation to that. That's not what I'm clicking on. Right? Like you can create a validation. I can't spell. I'm gonna ignore that for now. Um, I cannot set validations, right? Like I think the obvious thing, right? You can check based on the form control, right? Whether it be from your drop down selected items, um, or anything like that. If it's, if you're selecting something like let's say whatever they selected, or I guess this is just this is just my drop down, right? Then I can say if the data, um, if I want to, or this is what I want to be constant, sorry. If I wanted to like set some kind of message, I could say like I can first check um the information in that drop down and then say, hey, if that information is not something that I want the user to select, then I can simply say, um, you can't choose this item, or this item is obsolete, whatever, like you were talking about before, right? You can simply just add validations to something so a user can't select that item. Um, I don't know if you can specifically have it appear and block it out without, I think this is, I guess my immediate thought is just to have validation messages pop up, right? And then from there you can have a rule that would check that data and say, you know, look at what they select. Look at what the user selected. Does what the user selected equal something that's on the list of obsolete items? If it's on the list of obsolete items, then send this validation message saying this item is obsolete. You can't select it. And then obviously they wouldn't be able to submit this form until all of the items that they have selected are not obsolete. Does that make sense?
It does.
Does that sound like what you're like? Does it sound like it could work for what you're thinking? Do you
I
need me
think
to
that
like show some more information on it?
could you go in a little bit more detail about it, like what that would look like? I mean, but it does sound on par, like what I'm looking for, because we do have an event that event. So after you select your items, our initial thought was to check it on the event run, but if we can do it before that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so I mean, you can set it. You can set the trigger for this. So, yeah, obviously I need to set an input data. It's gonna be a list. So your selected items, right? So this would come from your thing, and you could say the selected items, this like list of selected items contains, or you could even do like contains any, and then you can have this be like a whole separate list, right? Coming from something, I'd need to make a new input for this. Um, Maybe this would be my like obsolete items coming from my data structure. Uh, right. And this might not be like perfect, but I'm just kind of doing it just to test or to give it like an example, right? And saying, hey, does the list of the items that I chose from my drop down contain any of the items that are in my obsolete category or data structure, like list of those items from the data structure already, right? Your selected items would just come from your form data and then from the selected items in the multi-select dropdown. So then that comes directly from the form. Your obsolete items, I don't have this set up, but you would have to, pick where that is if that's from your data structure, or if you need to fetch it beforehand or something, wherever that's coming from. Um, if it's in a previous form, just make sure that that gets sent in here as well. And so now you can pull those things. This rule will check it, and if it finds those obsolete items, then you'll set your validations for that drop down and say, hey, you can't do this because said items are obsolete. Please make a different selection or something like that with those. And you can change, obviously change what the messages say so that it details, more what you want. If it's false, you can clear validations, right? If it's false, that meaning that the rule is it's all good. There's no matches between these two things. I don't have anything in common. Then I can go ahead and just clear the validations on the multi-select dropdown so that there's no validation issues appearing. Let me just throw a constant value here so it doesn't mess up. Right? And so now if it finds something in this list of things that should be obsolete, it'll make a validation marker, and now I shouldn't be able to move on. If it doesn't find anything problematic, then it'll clear any validations so that I don't have any messages appearing to the user. And then I can trigger this active form flow by any selection change in my dropdown. So then as soon as someone picks an obsolete item in the dropdown, it should pop up with this message saying, hey, you selected an obsolete item. Please select something else because that's obsolete. Then you wouldn't necessarily have to have it run upon clicking the submit step or submit button or anything like that. You can do it anytime someone picks a dropdown item, then they can go ahead and make that selection change. And then in order to let the validations work, you can make sure it runs for outcomes. So then the user can't submit it if they do still have a validation sitting there for the item that they chose. And then that should display that information.
Nice. I think that's exactly what I'm looking for.
And I can even throw this in a flow real quick. At least I think I set it up so that it should work for me. Ignore that because we're just gonna go based off of this form here. I got my drop down, and if I pick item 1, then we can look and see, is it checking? Here in this case, it did check for obsolete items, so it should have set a validation message on my thing saying I can't choose this. I didn't actually have it break, so that's why it didn't pop up. But yeah, that's basically it. So it does check the lists, checks the rules. So I think that something worth exploring, testing out a little bit. Set up an active form flow, base it off of the drop down selection change. Check these items. Any questions? Or no?
That feels pretty straightforward. I do have one question. In
Yeah, sure.
this room, is my Firefly in here?
Not today. I know I saw it last week.
Ah, dang. I was hoping it was in here so that way I could just walk it through. Darn. Okay, that's fine.
What is the Firefly, Alex? This is Robert, by the way. I've always wondered. I've seen it a couple times. What is that?
So it's like a meeting AI. So it records the meeting, summarizes it, and gives me like the headliners as well as the play-by-play, and also it records the video itself so I can watch the video immediately.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's a really good tool, honestly. Our whole company uses it. And it's really because a lot of times we're like double booked, triple booked for meetings sometimes. So it's like it'll go in there in the meeting and then you can just get the highlights immediately about what's happening. And I mean, it's a great tool.
Cool. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. I did while you were talking about that. I did make a quick change because I did not set the item to display properly with when I set up the validation issue. But when I changed it to be a fatal validation, and I do choose an item that I put in my obsolete list, then I can actually have it here. And so it tells me that I cannot choose this item. And then if I remove it, because it's based on a selection change, it should remove that validation. And then also with the multi-select, it does show me all the items that I'm selecting anyway. So then if I do select something that can't be chosen, it immediately puts the red lines around it and says, hey, you can't choose this item. Again, if I remove it, validation's gone. So it looks like it should be all good. So I think that should do exactly what you're looking for and prevent you from doing this. And it shouldn't let me submit it either if I have an item that is incorrect. But if I have an item that's correct, I can submit it, no problem. So yeah, I would mess around with that. That should get
Nice.
you in the right direction for that for sure.
That looks good. Yeah. I
Alright.
do have one additional question. I don't know if you have more questions.
Yep. Yeah, sure. At the moment, no one else has asked questions, so you can go ahead and ask. As a reminder, everyone else, if you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll be happy to help. But yeah, go ahead, Alexander.
Okay. I have more form questions. We have a form that basically we have a field that's required, but we need it to basically only be required if another field is selected, essentially another drop down. So we want to make sure that this second field is based on the first field that is inputted. And I don't know if that's a option that decisions allows to change the required fields based on another field.
I'm sure you could do this with an active form flow as well, in the similar vein that what I just did with the concept of just setting up an active form flow with a set validations and clear validations, saying, if this value, I mean, I can even just do it with this drop down selection as an example, and just make a second active form flow. And we'll use item 2 as a reference for this. So we'll just make it selection change, run for outcomes. We'll set up a flow here. And we want to create a rule, first of all, that will just check the value. Of that selected item. So this will be the same thing. We're going to have a list coming in of the items that are selected. And we'll say if this list of items selected contains, or list contains, and then we'll just make this an obvious item 2. But obviously, it can be a Boolean checkbox. It can be, and then you just check if it's true or false. It can be a text box, and you can check if the text contains. It could be a, drop down. You can just check if the drop down selected option is this, whatever. Like this rule obviously is completely up to you how you do it. I'm just going to do list contains since that's what I currently have set up in my form. And then we can do the same exact thing with validations.
Another side note, you can also, for any like list contains or single statement rules, there's default rules for that. So instead of making your own like list contains rule, you can just use the list contains default one for faster development time, just for point.
Yes, thank you, Jared. I want to defend myself a little bit in saying I 100% know that. I just wasn't thinking. All right. Yeah. So then, yeah, same thing that I did before, right? I can make the multi-select drop down. Or sorry, I wouldn't want this set validations on that. I need a new field. Well, I'll come back to this. Let me just guess I forgot to add another field on my form to actually put a validation on. Then obviously we'd want to clear validations on some fields. This will be my selected items. Okay, and let's just say, if you select this, there's just some random text box that I need also to be filled out. I can't put question marks. Oh, I can't. Okay. Let me go back to my active form flow, make sure that's configured right. And I want to make sure that these validations are for that other text box. So if it matches my rule, so that saying that the user has selected some specific item in the list, then I want to set a validation message on this text box saying, hey, this text box needs to be required. And then this one would be set a validation message or clear the validations on that text box. Make it run for the submit outcome so that I can't submit it unless this validation is gone. And then that's just broken because I added a new input. We can ignore. And then if we go ahead and we run this, now, in addition to my other one, I have a new thing is to show me and say, hey, item 2, if I selected it, it'll now give me a validation message pointing out specifically that this specific field is required. So this completely overwrites the like required optional not used concept in in the actual like field that where you can select things, making it actually required for you to submit and move on. Completely based on the selection or again Boolean value, drop down selected, whatever thing that you're looking for here. So then I can completely ignore this. And so now for regular users, this field, this text box is optional. So then if I'm going through and just completing this normally, I can hit submit without needing to fill this item out or needing to fill out this text box or whatever this may be, whatever this field is. I don't have to complete it in order to submit. But if it's based on a selection, then my active form flow will check the values for that selection and say, hey, you can't do that. Like if I pick item 3 and I don't fill this out, works no problem. If I run it back and I pick item 2 and it'll give me that message because it recognizes that this is what my rule is running against. This is what, my rule flow is trying to say, hey, that the item that you have selected in your dropdowns is one of these items. So give me this validation message. And now it won't let me submit. No matter how many times I click on it, I can't submit this until I fill this field out. Once I fill it out, it's required. Oh, maybe I didn't consider. Oh, that's my fault. I didn't actually consider anything else. Sorry, not as simple as that. You're gonna have to add a little bit more information. That's right, because you actually also have to figure out, okay, after I set validations, I need to make sure that someone actually filled this data in. So I would need another, probably another rule or something here to say, okay, after I set the validations, or maybe I can blend it with this and say, like, add an extra condition. Items contains number 2 and the text box that they have, I could, add some kind of value is empty. Oh, sorry, is not empty. There, that's an additional field that's important. Text box filled would have to come from my Y item 2 text box value. Essentially. And now, sorry, I think this should be a little bit better. Now I can say, hey, is this contain the specific item and have an empty value here? If it's both, then I need set validations. Or if any of these are running false, then I need to set validations. If they're running true, then I need to clear those validations. Let's test this and see if it's doing what I'm hoping. And let me know if this at any point starts to go off what you're hoping for.
Nope, seems very on point of what I'm looking for.
Yeah, it made me.
Makes sense.
No, go ahead.
I'm sorry. It would make sense to why we wouldn't, why we'd be missing that part since we're having trouble with the same thing, and we're missing the validation rules on
Yeah.
our forms. So that that tracks.
Yeah. I don't want to get too caught in the weeds here with the semantics of my rules. I definitely need to take a sec to think about the logic. I'm more of a sit and stew in the logic kind of guy for a couple minutes before I do things. So on the spot might take me a little minute to just to make sure that um and everything, make sure that I'm you know uh getting there. But yeah, the concept I think is there. It's using those like keeping this optional for all users, and then you'd have to use the active form flow to say based on another selection from a different field, and then also assess whether or not there is data in here. Because if obviously if there is data in here and they selected that field, then you want to clear the validations. And if any other case, then you don't want those validations. You want it to block people from being able to submit until they either remove that item and they don't have the item selected anymore, or they have the other options. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Perfect. All right. We did have some questions in the Q&A in chat that I'll just address out loud so everyone can hear them. Because I know not everyone can see this, and on the YouTube video, we'll want to make sure that everyone can hear the questions and stuff. So we did have a question asking if we should know about coding or not in order to work with decisions. So if we need to use coding when we're dealing with decisions, or do you need to know coding when you're working for decisions? And so we did have Jared, thank you for responding in the chat for me while I was answering Alex's question. But I will read it out loud. Knowing coding is not required for decisions. It's a low to no code application, right? So we don't focus on really needing to know that code. So it's nice to know how to do coding and stuff, but it's not necessary. There are many decisions employees who work at decisions in decisions developer roles who have had education backgrounds or business backgrounds. And even with those backgrounds, they've been able to build scalable and stable projects for customers. And that is 100% true. I am actually one of those people. I'm not directly a developer, but I have definitely built some projects for the training team. My background is fully in education and not with technology or coding. So I don't necessarily need or have a lot of that content for me personally. So, but I have learned quite a bit about decisions. I have learned a little bit about coding here and there too, just kind of by association. A little bit about like databases and stuff by association. So kind of working with decisions helps you in a lot of little different ways. But yeah, definitely you don't need that stuff in order to really get some deep knowledge of how decisions works. Another question then that was asked, Muhammad asked further on the coding and stuff like that, in how many days we are trained to work with decisions. So in working with decisions, typically our actual training modules, each training project will take approximately a week to complete. So if you need to complete a project, if you're able to kind of focus fully on it, it should take around a week to complete the project. That includes our product training, our like basic course. That's really just like the basics and learning decisions. That'll take about a week to complete with a number of little challenges and some builds and stuff. And then each of our main project builds can take approximately a week. Again, with like full focus. If you're able to like fully focus on it, some people take a little bit less, some people take right around a week. But yeah, typically you can approximate around that time for completing projects if you're trying to go through our training. All right. Any additional questions? All right. If we have nothing else, then we can end our lunch and learn for the day, and we will go ahead and move forward with the rest of this week. So as we discussed in the beginning, if you need any questions, please feel free to join another Lunch and Learn. We've got Robert and Jared leading the rest of this week, and then we'll continue back on Monday next week. So thank you all for joining, and we will see you all next time.